Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brew. I'm Karyn Rudd. Welcome. I'm in the studio this morning with Dr. Hamid Ghany, who will be joining us after the break, and we will continue a very interesting conversation that I know you would like to be sure to tune into. We'll be right back after the break. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brew. I'm Karyn Rudd in your company for the next 2 hours, where we will be discussing a number of topics that is really happening here in Trinidad and Tobago of today. Mostly this is a program that is about current events and what's happening currently in our country. Some things good, some not so good, but in any event, we are always here to be of service to you, the viewer, the listener, those of you who are only able to tune in via the spoken word. And we're always happy to have you be part of us and we be part of you, and we're happy to be in your company. It is the Morning Brew, and I'll have a very special guest who will be joining me shortly after this break. Stay tuned. Good morning and welcome back to the Morning Brew. I'm Karyn Rudd. As I mentioned, this is the Morning Brew that is every morning from 8 until 10, where we keep you, the viewer and the listener, informed as to what's happening currently in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, you know, we're always happy to be in your company and have you be part of our program as well, and where we continue to keep you informed and entertained. We have a very special guest, or rather, I have a very special guest this morning that will be joining all of you. And he's going to be talking about a subject matter that from time to time piques our interests in Trinidad and Tobago, and of course globally, because we are viewed around the world as well. Now, my special guest this morning is Dr. Hamid Ghany, who is joining us here on set. Dr. Hamid Ghany is right here in Guardian Media, the Guardian Media building. Good morning, Dr. Ghany, and welcome to the Morning Brew. Dr. Ghany, we're going to be discussing this morning about the continuous issue that happens actually from time to time in terms of the media. What is allowed to be shared with the public, what is not allowed to be shared with the public. And as you may recall, Dr. Ghany, some months ago, there was the issue of some of the reporters of Guardian Media being upset about the privilege to share information with the public, how much is allowed, how much is not allowed. And so there is some talk about the reporters or the journalists in our country today in the media houses where they feel somewhat limited in terms of how much they can share with the public, how much they can share with the world as to what's happening in our country, and the real story, that is, and whether or not journalists may be targeted or not. So what are your thoughts on that, Dr. Ghany?
Well, freedom of the press is an enshrined right in our Constitution, so that we start from that premise. Then you have various laws such as libel and slander. You have defamation issues and so on. So that these are laws that restrain journalists from writing or saying things that may go into a particular domain. So there are restraints there. And then you had a famous case in 1999 that was decided by the House of Lords in the UK. That involved the development of something known as the Reynolds Rules. And the Reynolds Rules, to a large extent, involve being able to publish matters that may appear to be slanderous or libelous, but matters that are nevertheless in the public interest. The public has a right to know certain things, so that there is an occasion of qualified privilege. And in that particular context, there is some leeway for journalists to write and to speak, and for media houses to publish and to broadcast. So that there are rights and responsibilities all around. The journalists have certain rights and responsibilities, media houses have rights and responsibilities, and then there is the law of the land. So around all of these issues, you will find that it is an environment in which controversy can arise, but outside of that, you know, it's a constructive tension that does exist in the way in which these things are handled.
Dr. Ghany, a few months ago when some of the reporters of Guardian Media stormed out of the building, walked off their jobs because they felt that they did not have the liberty to, or rather liberty of expression or freedom of expression to tell the whole story and to constantly be edited and be told what and what not to do. And so do you feel that journalists feel somehow that their jobs are that their jobs are in jeopardy, that if they were to really reveal the whole story, so to say, that they could be targeted? Because there was some talk, allegedly, that some of the journalists were targeted who were free in expressing certain stories and were subsequently allegedly targeted. So how do you feel about that? How would you address journalists or make them feel that, okay, that they would be comfortable or feel comfortable to join or be part of a media house where they would have freedom of expression?
Well, I think that I was not in the country at the time when that occurred, and it certainly happened before I came to Guardian Media. So I don't have all of the facts with regard to the nitty-gritty of what went on. What I do know is that coming out of all of that, there was an engagement between the editorial staff and the management and the board, to the extent that what has been produced now is an editorial policy that can guide the relationship between journalists on the one hand and the management and the board on the other hand. So that I think something quite positive came out of that controversy. I'm not privy to the issues that took place there because I wasn't here at the time. But I would certainly say that from what I've seen, emerging from it is a very constructive document that has now been rolled out to all editorial staff at Guardian Media, both on the print side and on the electronic side. And that document now guides the relationship. So any journalist coming to work here now would be coming into an environment in which there is a written policy as regards how these relationships are to be constructed and construed. So in that sense, I think that a very positive environment has now been created editorially for the development of journalistic practices in handling sensitive material, with some of the key elements being, one, the need to be accurate, two, the need to give all sides of a story, and three, to maintain the highest standards of journalistic integrity in the way that things are handled. So that there's certain things that have also been written in, like for the print version, you have the breakfast test, which is that, you know, the kinds of pictures that you may use, you know, must pass the breakfast test. And for the evening news, you must pass the dinner test. So you don't want to air footage that could cause people to become upset in various forms or fashions, as the case may be, to the extent that they become physically ill with what you're airing. So that there are standards that are built in there, and these things have been arrived at after discussion, consensus, compromise.
Okay. Consensus and compromise. Well, Dr. Ghany, when we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more deeply about some of the ongoing issues that the public has been venting in terms of, can there please be more accuracy? So the public would like to have more accuracy, where sometimes we've seen another newspaper, for example, they would make a faux pas, so to say, and then come back the next day and make that correction or print that correction. So we'd like you to address that question when we come back from this break. We'll be right back with the Morning Brew. Welcome back to the Morning Brew. I'm Karyn Rudd, and in my company, my distinguished company, I've got the distinguished gentleman, Dr. Hamid Ghany, with us. And before we went to the break, we talked to Dr. Hamid Ghany about a number of things in terms of journalists in this country and what they are allowed and not allowed to report legally. And so the issue continues where we've got the general public venting their views and saying, well, could the media please get it right? Could the print and visual media please get it right? Where there are some topics that are being reported today and there's a misprint or misinformation, and the next day having a retraction or should be a retraction. And in some cases we see where we get a story and there's no follow-up. These are some of the things that the general public, you, the public, want to know. You want to know why there are faux pas in certain instances. Why? Sometimes the papers comes back, sometimes we come back, the media comes back and we say, okay, we're sorry, that was a misprint or that was misinformation, or we didn't have all the facts at the time. So we've got with us Dr. Hamid Ghany, who's going to address that question. Dr. Ghany, how do you address that?
Well, I think that there's a considerable amount of demand that goes into capturing the raw data, processing it into a story, and then after that it goes through a number of filters. So in the print you would then get past sub-editors and editors and page makers and various other entities before it makes it itself into print. And in television, likewise, you would have a number of screening processes before a story finally makes its way onto the air in the 7 o'clock news or some other program, as the case may be. So that one really has to depend upon the filters along the way. And of course, you're only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. So if the weakest link in the chain is going to give, then you're going to have a problem with the end product, or you may take an editorial decision not to air the product because you want to err on the side of caution, as the case may be. But because you are operating in an environment where there is competition, you don't want the other side to come out with a story that you have and you're sitting on. So sometimes you do take the risk to run the story because you feel confident that you can run it. You may send the story off to lawyers, a print story or a television, off to the lawyers to have a quick look and advise if there are any libel or slander issues, and then you get back the word and say, it's okay, go ahead, or no, I don't think you should. So you do have that particular dimension as well. So in a number of ways, the whole production process and the compressed time frame for news and the external competition from others, because you have a market outside there, and you want to build a reputation of being first with the news, you don't want to miss the news, that can create the kinds of internal pressures that can cause these kinds of faux pas situations to arise. And then you realize the next day, well, we have a bit of egg on our face, we've got to wipe it off, and the only way to wipe it off is with an apology or a retraction, a withdrawal, or some kind of correction. So that it's a hurly-burly environment. It's very time sensitive, and you've got to meet certain deadlines.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dr. Ghany, I thank you so much for your time. There's so many more things, there's so much more that we can see on this subject, and I can think of a million more questions I'd like to ask you on behalf of the public. However, we have out of time for today. I thank you so much for being our distinguished guest. Dr. Hamid Ghany was our guest today. Hopefully that answers some of the questions that you've been asking all along in terms of we want accurate and correct reporting. This is The Morning Brew. I'm Karyn Rudd. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Of course, see us again tomorrow, same time, at 8 o'clock for The Morning Brew. Have a good day.